Jacob Fatu just went down with a mysterious backstage attack that spawned new theories, so we'll check that out. We'll also see who could be connected to that situation. Starting things off with this massive situation involving Jacob Fatu. So in the days leading up to Smackdown, reports were running wild about how Jacob Fatu was allegedly dealing with a health-related matter and would be missing some time away from the ring. The reports didn't feature much details besides that. All they knew was that Jacob would be missing some time. But for Smackdown, they were advertising that Jacob would be in action against Drew McIntyre. And then the match between Jacob versus Drew was even upgraded to be a #1 contenders match for the WWE Championship. We saw Jacob and Cody even share a backstage segment together. It was a friendly moment, but Jacob basically told him that he was coming for the championship. But then we get to the main event, and we see that the reports about Jacob's status appears to be right. Jacob's music hits, but he doesn't come out and he's nowhere to be seen. The camera is then cut backstage to find Jacob laid out with what appears to be several of his teeth all over the floor. That led to Drew McIntyre coming out and demanding to be labeled as the new #1 contender for the title, since Jacob Fatu obviously can't compete. Nick Aldis blames Drew McIntyre for the attack, but Drew says he had no part in what happened to Jacob. Cody Rhodes came out next and also appeared to believe that Drew McIntyre was responsible for the attack on Jacob Fatu. Therefore, Cody gets angry and decides to just put the championship on the line right then and there against Drew McIntyre. Cody doesn't appreciate Drew taking out his friends backstage just for a title opportunity, so Cody just gives him the match on the spot for that reason. But it wasn't really much of a match, pretty much just a story angle to continue Drew and Cody's feud. After a few minutes, Cody grabbed the title and smacked Drew McIntyre in the head with it, causing a disqualification. A lot of fans were a little thrown off by this moment too, because you don't usually see a babyface champion end a match with a disqualification like that. They're usually the ones that want to win fair and square. So a lot of fans started bringing up the heel turn route for Cody Rhodes, but this doesn't seem like it had anything to do with a heel turn. It seems like what they were going for was that Cody Rhodes was so angry and disgusted with what Drew McIntyre did to Jacob Fatu backstage that Cody wasn't thinking clearly and was just blinded by rage. That's why Cody caused the disqualification. He didn't cause it to be slimy and get out of the title defense. He caused it because he couldn't think straight and was just so beyond angry. So that's the explanation for that. Drew wasn't officially crowned as the #1 contender during this segment, but it appears that this feud between Cody and Drew will be continuing, especially after it just got even more personal here with this episode of Smackdown. But here's where this entire story kind of takes a wicked twist, and it involves the attack on Jacob Fatu. It almost basically feels like another remake of the Jade Cargill storyline from late last year. Jade Cargill was mysteriously attacked backstage. Written off for several months, a lot of people looked at the obvious heel choice for being behind the attack. But turns out it was Naomi who was behind the whole thing. WWE would then use this storyline structure again back in April when Bayley was mysteriously attacked backstage as well. But they didn't really ride that one out for long. They had Becky Lynch come out just a few weeks later and confess to it, so there wasn't much of a stretched out mystery there. And now they come back to this storyline structure for the Jacob Fatu situation. And so far, it seems like this one could be stretched out and turned into a real mystery, like the Jade Cargill situation, because a lot of things are so similar there between both stories. So what is one of the main motives why someone would want to attack Jacob Fatu at this point in time? Well, the first thing you can think of is jealousy. Jacob was set to take part in a big #1 contenders match on this night, and whoever attacked him was probably jealous of that fact and didn't want Jacob to get that opportunity. Therefore, they took him out and made sure he never made it to the ring that night. So when it comes to who's the obvious pick in this mystery attack, you gotta go with Drew McIntyre. Drew is most definitely an obvious choice because he's the one that benefits the most from Jacob getting taken out. Drew takes out Jacob so that there is no #1 contenders match, and Drew gets handed the #1 contender spot without doing any work. Drew McIntyre absolutely looks the most guilty here. That's why Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes both assumed that Drew had to be behind the attack. But just like everyone said way back with the Jade Cargill situation, the heel choice just seems too easy, just too obvious. There has to be a twist there, especially since it is a pro wrestling storyline after all. It's one of those rare situations where a heel doesn't seem like they're lying. Drew McIntyre swears what happened to Jacob had nothing at all to do with him. And you sort of get the sense that Drew McIntyre is telling the truth there with that claim. It almost feels like an idiotic move for Drew McIntyre's character to make if he really did attack Jacob, because all eyes would be on him. There wouldn't be anything mysterious or sneaky about that attack at all. Everyone would be looking at Drew and Drew only. So that's why you kind of want to believe Drew McIntyre when he said he didn't do it. So if it wasn't Drew, who in the world attacked Jacob? Well, there are a few solid options, In one of the clips of Drew McIntyre arriving to SmackDown, he has his phone in his hand, and he's looking at it, telling everyone that they don't want to miss SmackDown tonight, and as he's walking away, the alert sound for the timer on his phone goes off. So is it possible to think that maybe Drew McIntyre didn't directly put hands on Jacob Fatu, but maybe he called someone in to handle the job for him? Maybe Drew reached out and worked with someone to take out Jacob Fatu, and that's why Drew was so happy and confident before SmackDown even started. Maybe he was aware that Jacob Fatu wouldn't make it to the ring for that main event because of this plan he had set in motion with whoever was on his phone. So that is a route that some fans are looking at. Was it a bigger plan that Drew McIntyre was a part of? Some fans are even looking at Cody Rhodes as a possible suspect. Maybe Cody didn't like his odds of beating Jacob Fatu straight up in the ring. Maybe Cody wanted to protect his title from Jacob. So Cody took out Jacob backstage and strongly put the blame on Drew McIntyre just to keep himself clean of that backstage attack. But the last fan theory floating around, and perhaps the best and most realistic one, is the idea that Randy Orton was behind the attack on Jacob Fatu. Randy has been in and out of television in recent weeks. Not really a consistent storyline going on for Randy right now, but in the moments that we do see him, Randy is always eyeing down that WWE Championship that's on Cody's shoulder. It's clear that Randy is interested in holding that title again. He even put those desires out in the world just earlier this year when he faced John Cena for that same exact title. And Randy was screwed out of his opportunity there in that match with John Cena, and never got a rematch after that. So if that championship desire is still there burning inside Randy Orton, maybe he's the one that took out Jacob because he was jealous. Maybe Randy feels like it should have been himself in that #1 contenders match against Drew McIntyre. So as a result of those feelings, Randy took out Jacob to help clear the path for himself to eventually make a move on Cody Rhodes and come for the title. Now, out of the possibilities we discussed today, that Randy case surely seems like the most solid option. It clicks, it makes sense, and it mysteriously and quietly sets up Cody versus Randy, while the feud with Drew McIntyre is still going on. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for any more clues and hints that's revealed, because history tells us that Drew McIntyre could be innocent from this entire act on Jacob after all. But what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.